Great question, Black Uru Strikes. So I want to make sure that I'm clear. Um, and I apologize if I wasn't in the first video. So I'm not saying that racial trauma is specific and unique to Black men. As a matter of fact, if you're Black and you were born and raised in America and in other countries as well, I'm sure most of us have some specific traumas that are related to our race. Not all of us, but most of us can identify with having some painful wounds or trauma related to that. What I am saying is comparatively to women, and women do have racial trauma as well, but comparatively to women, men tend to have that to much more of an extreme. So, for example, I'm going to try to break it down to you in a simplified version. So when I've worked with folks who have personality disorders that engage in things like self-harm. So for example, they engage in things like cutting themselves, burning themselves, hitting themselves. Um, in my professional experience, that men have been willing to go to more extremes and demonstrate they're much more violent and aggressive towards themselves, if that makes sense. So men will push things to a limit. Same thing with, for example, sexual assault. Men are typically much more violent towards other men and boys when it comes to physical aggression or any types of aggression in general, with the exception maybe of relational aggression, which is where men and women are tied to each other. So the same thing in my experience is also true with racial trauma and self-loathing due to racial trauma, or just lashing out at people or other people, even if it's psychologically, for the simple fact of racialized aggression. And I think a lot of that is manifesting now in what we see when we have these sort of red pill podcasts, when we have men that are getting, even on this app, talking about Black men specifically getting on this app, tearing down women within their own race, and, just sort of distancing themselves, if you will, from their own race. And so a lot of that stems from narcissism, a lot of that stems from trauma to that, but that's a part of themselves that they actually want to distance themselves away from. And I've even worked with clients, believe it or not, and I know that this may sound extreme, that don't even identify as Black or African American.